Hey, what's up guys? I'm KBHD here, and this is the Oneplus 7T. So if you followed the leaks, aka promo, you've probably seen pretty much every angle of this thing, but now it's officially been unveiled. I've been using it daily for about a week, and this is a pretty easy phone to explain. So Oneplus, the company, they have their sort of upper mid-range phones somewhere around $500, $600, like OnePlus 7. Then they have their premium high-end flagship stuff like OnePlus 7 Pro. That's closer to $700, $800. So this phone, the Oneplus 7T, kind of a hard name to say out loud. It's not the 70, but it's the Oneplus 7T. This phone is sort of a Frankenstein between those two groups. It's right between the super high-end and the upper mid-range, if that makes any sense. So to be perfectly clear, it is a really great phone for the price, which is basically the OnePlus special at this point. They've continued this fascinating, slow creep up in price, but when you go over this phone and everything they've combined in here, it's pretty on point for what you're getting for $599. So this display is a perfect example, right? So just look at this screen. The whole phone is really big, as you can tell, but that's because it's got this huge 6.55-inch OLED screen. It's just barely smaller than the 7 Pro, actually, and that's a huge phone. But you have the teardrop notch at the top from the 7, and it's a flat screen now instead of one of those panels that curves around the edges, and I'm down with that. And it is 90 Hertz. So this is, as far as I know, I guess the cheapest phone with a high refresh rate display like this, and I'm glad they brought that down. That's becoming a signature characteristic of these phones. So overall, it's a nice combination of things, despite not being the highest end display. You know, it gets pretty bright, up to 1,000 nits, so outdoor visibility is no problem. And the teardrop notch being a little smaller makes it super easy to ignore on this gigantic screen. But it's also 1080p, not 1440. And the bezels are just a little bit thicker, a tiny bit, as you can see. And I have noticed some real off-axis color tint and rainbowing and other consistencies like that you'll notice on not so high-end OLED displays. So it's not the super best of the best, but it's like right underneath. It's right in between. It's making sense, right? They're bringing things down from the higher-end phone. That makes sense while keeping the sort of baseline of the mid-range. The high refresh rate, I think, is the most important thing that they brought down. That I love me some 90 Hertz, some high refresh rate goodness. So that's good to see. And then just the design of this phone in general is also a bit of a Frankenstein. You've probably noticed it by now. There's this aura blue color again, although this time it's not as matte as before. It's kind of closer to like a satin because it has more of a sheen to it. It's not really glossy like some other phones, but you definitely do still see fingerprints much more than a matte phone. So it's somewhere in between. Again, the 7 Pro is more matte than this one. But here's some other improvements you do have. The alert slider is tighter, so it's more satisfying to move between the 3 positions, so that's pretty sweet. They brought down the high-end, really precise haptic motor that's honestly only really matched on Android by the Pixel at this point, so that was great. And they brought the optical fingerprint reader underneath the glass that's also the same sensor as the one from the 7 Pro, and I think one of the best in any phone under the glass right now. The speakers are also just as good as the 7 Pro. They sound loud and full, and there's also a bigger speaker grill up at the top. And charging is now even faster. So they're calling it Warp Charge 30T. It's still a 30-watt fast charger, but thanks to improved battery chemistry in the 3,800 milliamp hour battery in this phone, it'll charge 23% faster than Warp Charge 30 already did. So in other words, it's silly fast. And it's kind of a different philosophy on battery management. On one hand, I love, the little chunkier phones that'll have this massive battery inside and all-day battery life. It changes the way I use phones. I didn't worry about charging ever during the day. But on the other hand, a phone that's really trim like this that has crazy fast charging just lets you have this peace of mind that anytime you're starting to get low, you can just plug in for a couple minutes and be right back up to 70, 80%. So that's like a different kind of confidence in the battery. I don't really have a preference between the two. It would be great to have both, but as of right now, I like having this. Warp Charge 30T, they say will get you to 70% from dead in half an hour, and that's awesome, and I believe that, but I'm even more impressed by just how much you can add from plugging in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just giving you a massive boost for the rest of the day. So the 7T does have decent battery life, but this is the steady compromise they make for not having the best battery life. And then of course, the gigantic camera circle on the back. It's genuinely, I think, the first design from OnePlus that doesn't feel to me like really sleek or clean. Like they've done triple cameras before even, but this one is very different. It kind of reminds me of somewhere between Motorola or the Red Hydrogen, or you might even remember the Nokia Lumia series back in the day. Funny thing is, these are essentially the same exact cameras that the OnePlus 7 Pro already has. Same standard 48 megapixel standard camera, same 117 degree ultra wide, and then a shorter 2x telephoto zoom camera instead of a 3x. So if you were actually looking for some big camera improvements for the 7T, that is not what's happening here. And it's actually not like the OnePlus 7 Pro camera was bad. It's just that it was the one part of the phone that wasn't, best in class, world class. It sort of held it back from being an arguably perfect phone in a way. But in a $600 phone in 2019, this set of cameras is perfectly good. I've been taking photos and videos with it just to see if I notice any substantial differences around, but there isn't anything too drastic. Still very solid in daylight and a bit color fringy and soft around the edges with close-up subjects. And passable, but not amazing shots in less than ideal lighting. If you think about other cameras in this $600 price range, that's about right actually, right up until they start to get blown out the water by the $700 iPhone 11. You can take portrait mode shots now in telephoto or standard cameras now, which is cool. And they are also enabling 4K 30 FPS video from the ultra-wide camera, so they've heard our feedback. They are going to do that. And I think the most impressive improvement here is the new super macro mode. So you hit this little flower icon in the top corner, and you can get way up close to things, 2.5 to 8 centimeters away from the camera lens, which most smartphones do struggle with if they don't have a macro mode. And so with this, I was able to take some close-ups that I couldn't even get with the iPhone 11. And then of course, this wouldn't be a new OnePlus phone without really killer high-end on-paper specs. And so that's what they've done here again. So Snapdragon 855 Plus, the newest chip, 8 gigs of RAM, not 12, and 128 or 256 gigs of UFS 3.0 storage. So yeah, this thing is fast. And it's running the latest version of OxygenOS 10 on top of Android 10, which I think makes this the first non-pixel Android 10 phone I've used, and it's been really good so far. I obviously love that they're early to updates and performance has actually been really smooth. You may have noticed I didn't keep the Android 10 gestures, the swipe gestures turned on. Here's why. Android 10 gestures on this phone are a swipe up from the bottom for home, a half swipe up for multitasking, and then a swipe in from the lower side to go back from anywhere. You know what else uses that swipe to go back on the side? A lot of Android apps for other things. Twitter to switch between accounts, Flamingo for Twitter, TickTick, my Tasks app, YouTube Studio, Google Photos, the Play Store. I mean, a lot of Google apps use that hamburger menu, and the screen is so big on this phone that I don't really want to reach up to the corner with one hand to press the hamburger menu every single time. So I don't. So I turned it off and I just keep using the buttons for now. But aside from that, Android 10 has been really nice, really smooth as you'd expect on a new phone with a 90 Hz screen, and all the optimizations OnePlus is continually working on for OxygenOS, they really show. So all that for me, using this phone has added up to it being a pretty solid set of trade-offs that add up to a pretty good phone for a pretty great price. It really feels like they're taking the stuff that they learned how to do better and more efficiently from the 7 Pro and bringing it down to a more competitive price, which is a great way to sell a lot of phones. Now, of course, to be perfectly clear, the OnePlus 7 Pro is still a better phone than this, just because of the small bit of trade-offs they've kept, a higher quality display, higher resolution, not as much color fringing and things like that, bigger battery, less ugly camera bump on the back, and the notchless screen on the front. So all of that sort of adds up to a little bit of trade-offs here. But overall, this is that incremental update you expect from a T phone from OnePlus, with the X factor of that 90 Hz display that is so hard to switch back from. So that's the statement that the phone leaves me with, is that I'm glad that OnePlus is doubling down on the high refresh rate stuff to really make phones feel smooth. High refresh rate, all the things please. This is gonna be a really good buy for people who wanna spend like 600 bucks on a phone. But for me, I'm personally going to be pretty excited about the OnePlus 7T Pro. Names are getting weird, but that's the phone that's gonna have the best of the best that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, not bad. I'll have a link below if you want to check it out. That's been it. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.